I started on this myth confident it would be easy to find, as it's very well known, but it turns out it's a lot more complicated than it seems at first. It comes to us through several different sources. Sur la Thôtre is a late 14th century piece which describes Freya getting Brisingamen. It also adds an ending with Olaf Tryggvason. Here, the arrival of Christianity gets rid of the pagan curse. In it, the characters are humanized, and Ofin is the ruler of a country far in Asia called Asjaheimur, if you're ready to believe that. Although, to be fair, the capital is still called Asgarth. Loki's father is a peasant, not a giant, and his mother Laufey is translated as Needles to indicate she's thin and delicate. So this is obviously reusing characters and tropes which are more ancient, but happily changing the setting and adding a Christian morality to it. Other sources we can draw from include Husdropa, a poem in which there is some sort of competition between Loki and Heimdall over something which might be Brisingamen, but it's a very obscure myth, and that's about all we can work out for sure. The Lokasenna mentions Gefjon lying with 4 dwarves for a necklace, and there are hints elsewhere that Gefjon could simply be another name for Freya. So we've got all the pieces of this story in lots of different texts, but it's difficult to find one which synthesizes them all. So, what actually happened? Freya woke up one morning and decided she'd go shopping. The best place to go shopping is Svartalfheimur, the land of the dwarves, because they make the best jewellery. So she walked down the murky tunnels, going from craftsman to craftsman, admiring the fine rings and bracelets disposed before her. She passed Brock and Sindri, working hard. She saluted Ivaldi's sons, but none of them had quite what she wanted. Then she passed in front of a small shop run by 4 dwarves, and there she saw it. The necklace of her life. It was made of amber and shone like fire. She walked inside. "How much for that necklace?" she asked. "It's not for sale," the dwarves answered. Freya didn't take no for an answer. She offered the dwarves silver, then gold. The dwarves were starting to realise how desperately she wanted their jewel, and being good merchants, they only played up their reluctance. In the end, Freya sighed in despair and said she would give them anything they wanted. "Anything we want? Oh, we might be able to think of something," said the dwarves. The 4 dwarves were called Olfric, Dvalin, Berlingr, and Grir. You'll notice one of the dwarves actually had a name which means elf, which underlines the fuzzy line between both races. As I've said before, dwarves and dark elves were probably the same creatures. They were ugly, malformed beings, with leering eyes and wandering hands. They wanted what everyone wanted, Freya. They didn't bother asking for her to marry them, though. Freya knew what she wanted too. She said yes to the dwarves' offer, and spent 4 nights in Svartalfheimur. She brought the necklace back with her, beautifully displayed around her neck. "Brisingamen," she whispered to herself as she walked back to Asgarth. It's interesting here to underline Freya's links to gold. She cries tears of gold when her husband Ofr is away. She is sometimes linked to Gulveig, who brought lust for gold in Asgarth and started the war between Aesir and Vanir. Norse culture has an ambivalent relationship with gold. On the one hand, it's a source of power and honour. On the other hand, it corrupts. In many stories, stacks of gold are cursed, and families kill each other over it, their wish to possess it being too strong. In the same way, Gulveig brings greed into Asgarth and marks the beginning of its slow downfall. And here, Freya's want is so strong it pushes her to accept the dwarf's steel. In some ways, she's fulfilling her purpose as a goddess. She is a creature of gold and sex, of desire and want. Now, her absence hadn't gone unnoticed. After a few days without seeing her, Loki had started to wonder what Freya was up to. When he saw her come back from Svartalfheimur, displaying this wonderful new jewel, he guessed something had happened. He wasn't sure what price she'd had to pay to get it, but he could guess. Being a terrible snitch, Loki went straight to Ofin to tell on Freya. When Ofin heard about this, he was furious. Why he was so furious isn't quite made clear. After all, he wasn't Freya's husband, so what did he care? But it's probable that earlier versions of this myth had Freya and Frigg confused, and there were only one character. In the Sur la Thôtre version, it's stated that Freya is Othin's concubine. One way or another, the most probable scenario was that Othin felt he'd been cheated on by Freya, and worst of all, she'd done it with 4 dwarves, and for a bauble. "Loki, go and steal Brisingamen off Freya," said Othin. "What have I got to do with it?" asked Loki. "Go tell her you're upset yourself." "I said, go and steal Brisingamen. Do I need to repeat myself?" Loki grumbled that this was going to be difficult, and that knowing the gods he'd get into trouble for stealing even if he did it by Othin's orders. You brought me this bad news, you deal with it, said Ofin. Shoot the messenger, complained Loki, but still, he obeyed. He went to Freya's hall, called Sessrumnir. Loki could see animals lounging on the floor before the hall, gazing into the night. What kind of animals is another problem. Now, Freya owned a chariot, like most gods, and the chariot was pulled by a pair of beasts. Most of the time it's assumed Freya's cart is pulled by two cats, but during the 19th century, scholars debated whether it was actually cats or bears that pulled the goddess's chariot. The debate arose around one word. Snorri Sturluson uses two words to designate Freya's animals, Kotum and Fressa. The word Fressa is the problem here, as it seems it could mean snarler, hisser, or bear. Many kennings use the word fress to refer to a bear, or, more rarely, to a tomcat. Used with Kotum, it would seem to indicate wild tomcats, big ferocious animals, rather than tame house cats. As we don't know which sources Snorri was using, it's impossible to know which words were most authentic or most common to describe Freya's pets. After a rather heated debate between 1830 and 1870, people seemed to settle for cats. Back to our story. Loki wasn't a big fan of attracting the maybe cat's attention. He decided he would never be able to get close without getting caught, unless he changed shape. He turned into a fly and flew over the cats' heads and up to the hall. He searched for a way in, but Freya actually took care of her house, and it was built without the slightest gap. After searching for ages, Loki finally found a tiny hole, big enough for a needle. He crawled through it and buzzed his way into Freya's bedroom. Freya was sleeping. Loki flew up to her and saw the necklace Breisingamen. She was wearing it in bed, and the clasp to unfasten it was behind her neck. Who sleeps with their jewellery on? Thought Loki grumpily. He landed on Freya's cheek and used a technique which had proven its use with Brock. He stung Freya. She groaned in her sleep and tried to slap him away. He quickly flew up to the ceiling and waited. As she turned to lie on her side, she freed the clasp from underneath her. Loki turned back into a man and very delicately took off the necklace. He left the house through the front door as if nothing had happened. When Freya woke up the next day, the first thing she noticed was that Breisingamen was gone. She suspected this might be Ofin's doing, as the All-Father sometimes had weird ways of showing he was upset. Rather than going to him, who might have seen her with the four dwarfs from the top of his throne, she decided to go to Heimdall. After all, Heimdall always had good ideas. He'd been the one to get Thor to dress up as a woman to spare Freya from marrying Thrym. She found him at his usual post, at the top of the Bifrost. When she told Heimdall her necklace had been stolen, he snorted a laugh. No doubt who the culprit is, then, he said. It's Loki. I saw him in the middle of the night, walking away from Asgarth. Let's get the Jotunborn's skin, growled Freya. Considering what she'd paid for the necklace, you can understand how angry she was to have it taken off her. Heimdall glanced over the world with his wonderful eyes until he found Loki. Loki had turned into a seal and was hiding under the island Singastein, a barren rock jutting out of the sea. I'll get your necklace back, said Heimdall. He left his post, which was apparently okay even if he was supposed to keep watch for Ragnarok. Luckily for him, Ragnarok didn't happen while he was off solving Freya's problems for her. If the giants had chosen that moment to invade, the story would have gone differently. Heimdall transformed himself into a seal and plunged into the waves after Loki. When Loki saw him coming, he bared his teeth at his old enemy. They would fight again at the end of times, rather more nobly, but then and there they fought as seals on the beach. They went for each other's neck with their teeth, rolling around each other as the waves crashed on the shore. I don't know if you've ever seen seals fight, but it's more hardcore than you'd think. It can get quite bloody. Obviously the author of this piece had seen seals wrestle before, and he thought it was good enough for gods. It was a long, strenuous fight, but Loki was the god of mischief and trickery, and he often failed in straightforward confrontation. Also, he was better at being a fly than a seal, so in the end, he had to give in to Heimdall and give Breisingamen back to him. Now you'll come before Othin for justice, said Heimdall, so that he knows that you're a thief as well as a liar. I wouldn't drag Othin into this, said Loki. You might be surprised whose side he's on. He's on the side of justice, I'm sure, said Heimdall. You won't trick me into letting you go. So Heimdall brought Breisingamen back to Freya, and said they should all go before Othin. Oh, there's no need, said Freya. Now I've got it back, we can all be friends again. I think we should, answered Heimdall. I never thought I'd say this, added Loki, but I agree with Heimdall. Let's see what Othin has to say about all this. So they all went before Othin. Now this is when the story varies, again. In some versions, Othin simply told off Freya for her behaviour, and she got the necklace back, after having promised she would be good, which, judging by the Lokasenna, was a promise she didn't keep. In the Sur la Forge, we can feel the influence of the Christian clerics who wrote up the myths. In their version, Othin wanted Freya to do penitence. As punishment, he started. Oh, I don't like that word, moaned Freya. As punishment, he repeated, glaring at her, you will choose 2 kings and their armies. They will fight a violent battle. Every morning they will rise and fight that same battle again. That is, until a Christian man comes forward and is brave enough to bear arms against them. If he is ready to go into the fray and kill them all, then every man he slays will stay down. Although it might seem weird to put war in the hands of the goddess of love, it isn't unthinkable for Freya to be linked to warfare. It is sometimes mentioned that half of the Einherjar who die on the battlefield go to her hall, and the other half join Othin in the Valhöll. How gods share out dead humans isn't completely clear, and different myths give contradictory sources, but it doesn't seem incoherent for Freya to have some attributes of a fighting goddess. So wait, I'm not stuck in my room for a month, said Freya, as she realised what she'd been told to do. No, said Othin. I can still go shopping, she asked. Well, only if you curse the 2 humans to— Okay, no worries, consider it done, she smiled, relieved. Othin wasn't sure his punishment had quite achieved its purpose. Freya cursed the armies of Hrithim, son of Hjahandi, and Högni, son of Halfdan. They fought over a woman, as must be the case if Freya is involved. They stayed locked in eternal combat until Ivar, one of Olaf Tryggvason's followers, came forward. He did a wonderful job at killing everyone for good, so they stayed in their graves forever after. In other words, Freya got away with it. Hi everyone! We've now got over 100 subscribers! Champagne! Thank you to everyone for supporting the channel. I'm working on a special episode to celebrate, although it's not quite finished yet, so I'll keep you posted. Next fortnight's episode is Idun's Apples, or how kidnapping Idun led to Skathi getting married. Also called Remember Your Actions Have Consequences. See you then!